changed a lot of our lives, including having this meeting over Zoom. We were able to meet in person last time, obviously, but one of the reasons for the delay, the majority of the reason for the delay was just the fact that obviously the hospitality industry was dramatically impacted by the pandemic. All of you fall into some level of that impact, and so did our client, in that they had to put the project on hold in order to get their funding secured. So fortunately for the client and the project, that funding is in the works. And one of the things that we've worked on as a project team is a way to try and streamline some of the processes that we had talked about early on with this group of how the construction was going to go in a manner that, in theory can shorten our duration, which means a shorter term impact for all the businesses that are dealing with the fact that there's a construction project at this facility, but also help inform some of the design and make sure that we can uncover any unknowns at this stage so that we don't have an unanticipated delay because of an existing condition. So the solution to that situation is going ahead and applying for a demolition and abatement permit. Every day that we spend on demolition and abatement is a day less that we need to spend when we perform construction. And it also, by getting the demolition and abatement done in the building, it will uncover the majority of unexpected issues that we may run into in the construction phase of the project, and will allow us to deal with those in a more expedient manner, and ultimately, keep the duration as short as possible. So that's just kind of in a nutshell update of what has happened over the last a little more than a year, from when I think this group probably met in early 2020, Megan, I think maybe at the good news or the not bad news, obviously everybody probably wishes that there would be no impact and this hotel would just magically open. The news is that we have not changed anything with the plan that we discussed with everybody previously. The sidewalk closure permit that we're required to pull with the city of Asheville is the exact same document that was approved at the city council level and that was submitted last March when we thought we were going to be able to get started with this process. We have made 2 changes to that document, and I'm going to share my screen in a minute to show it to you. Those 2 changes have been improvements to the old scenario that will, in theory, help alleviate some of the burden that would be placed on outdoor seating opportunities, specifically on Wall Street. And we've also worked with Chai Punny to potentially relocate their outdoor seating area that our client was letting them utilize the front of his vacant building for. So if it's okay, Megan, I'll see if I can share my screen here. And then I will certainly take any questions as I go through this, and feel free to kind of unmute and interrupt me if I'm going down a tangent and you feel like you need to get a question answered first. Okay, so hopefully, let me know if you see the logistics plan up on the screen. Can you see that, Megan?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay,
Yep.
Great. So orienting everybody, this is the Flatiron building. It's an aerial view that was taken off of Google Earth. And all of these boxes kind of indicate what we are going to do specific to the construction, logistics, and laydown area as it relates to needing to close the sidewalk along Battery Park Avenue, where my cursor is, in front of the Flatiron. And so one of the biggest feedbacks that we got from the business owners as we started evaluating the fact that we were going to have to close the sidewalk was, please do not redirect pedestrian traffic to an opposite side of Battery Park from what they would typically be walking down in front of the Flatiron, which means that, the potential customers for all the businesses further up towards the Grove Arcade and the parking deck, those pedestrians will stay on the Flatiron side of the street, so to speak. And we will do that with a temporary crosswalk that will start right around the iron kind of monument at the corner of Wall Street and Battery Park. And then there will be a covered pedestrian walkway in this green area. For those of you that noticed what our company did at the Asheville Art Museum, we did something very similar there, where it was a pedestrian covered walkway that kept all the pedestrians on the art museum side of the road, but gave them a safe walking path to kind of get themselves through what is our construction area. So once they start turning to make the connection back to the sidewalk here, this is a little out of scale. The intention is to end the pedestrian tunnel prior to the end of the Flatiron building itself, and to also maintain the current entrance at the far end, the old entrance to the Sky Bar and the entrance to where the historic elevators are in the building. That entrance will be maintained during this first demolition phase that we are looking to enter. Within the area that is going to be behind this covered walkway, we are using it in the demolition phase for dumpster area. In the construction phase, and that's what this note speaks to, we will shift from staging dumpsters to get them demolished debris out of the building to material lay down, a material hoist that will allow us to distribute our construction materials throughout the building. And then we will have some dumpsters as well. Part of the reasoning and thinking is, since we're closing the sidewalk in front of the Flatiron and we're taking over these parking spaces in front of the Flatiron, to try and utilize that area as much as possible for material loading and unloading, so that we don't have to impact traffic flow on Battery Park Avenue. One of the changes, originally what City Council had approved was over here putting a fence to separate the back part of the building from the construction and the public way, putting a fence along the existing brick border. And since that was approved, we have a need for outdoor seating for all of the restaurants along Wall Street. And so when Stephanie and Megan and I met to originally go through this kind of revised plan and take a look at where things were, one of the requests was, can we shift that fence closer to the building to maintain 14 feet of vehicular traffic path, and also keep the existing outdoor seating on Wall Street where it is currently. We did go out and figure out a way to fit all of that in. Instead of putting the fence along this brick border, we're going to get it as close to the existing trees as we can, and not have to impact the drive lane width that is currently there now as you drive down the street. So that's one of the revisions we've made. And then the other one, like I said, is just keeping this area for dumpsters only during the demolition phase. And then once we go to the construction phase, which I'll speak to the timing of shortly, that'll shift to more of a lay down and material hoist area. The other things that are kind of clear things that we need to do from a safety standpoint is we are going to maintain this pedestrian crosswalk that is there currently. This is not a new crosswalk, it's the one that exists currently. So there'll be a safe exit from our pedestrian tunnel that will allow folks to still use this crosswalk. We're also going to put an ADA ramp here to allow handicap access in this area. And then lastly, we're going to maintain 26 feet of width here. And the reason that's so much wider than what we have to do on Wall Street is to allow for a ladder truck access from a fire department standpoint to come down Battery Park. In order to do that, the only parking spaces that we are closing that are not immediately in front of the Flatiron itself would be the handful of spaces that are in front of the current Battery Park. I think it's number 21 there. So timing wise, and then I'll open this up for questions. We are, the demolition permit is ready. There are some preliminary tests that we're doing on the inside of the building to get ready for the abatement. And once we're able to get the sidewalk closure permit approved, have this meeting to notify everybody and take any feedback that we can from it, then we will mobilize our demolition crews and plan to do demolition from now until the end of the year. And then the project is scheduled to start the interior renovations, have the full permit to do that work, and open in February of 20. Always get my years messed up. February of 23. The other things that we have worked on, and the delay has actually helped us come up with some options that weren't available prior to COVID, is we heard loud and clear that to the extent possible, don't let all of the construction workers show up early in the morning and take all the prime parking spaces that customers use for all of the businesses in this area, especially in the parking deck. So we have access to some of the parking lots behind Central United Methodist Church. And we also have access to a parking lot across from that same church. We plan to utilize that for as much of our construction parking as possible to avoid having to take space in the parking deck and the metered spaces, around the businesses in this area. And what Stephanie, for those that y'all were on the call early, what Steph was alluding to with some conversations I'm going to have with the city is there's some other city-owned property that we may be able to utilize to just further give a parking option to our contractors that won't burden the potential customer parking in this area. So I'll just kind of close this portion before we take comments and questions. I sympathize with all of you and understand that this is not an optimal situation for you, and it comes right at the hopefully end of the bad part of the pandemic, and we're heading into the new normal when you guys need to start making back all of the lost revenue that you had during the pandemic. And I want to do everything I can to not only sympathize with that, but to mitigate it. But we are obviously bound by certain factors that we can't avoid in what we're being asked to do with the project here. So I will leave it at that and start to, I will leave my screen sharing up, and let me switch to where I can see everybody again and maybe just start taking questions. Megan?
Yeah, it looks like Cassidy has her hand up.
Yes, I just had a question. It's not really directed at anybody specifically, just whoever could maybe answer it. So I do appreciate that fence is being moved, because my main concern when I saw that was like for delivery vehicles, because for the most part, a lot of us try to prevent the big trucks from coming down the street, but we do sometimes get one on occasion. And I just was wondering, is there going to be any, I assume there will be signage near the construction, but is there any chance there could be signage towards the beginning of the street to kind of get people to go over to the sidewalk portion that's actually like built out further on the right hand side? Obviously, I don't want to direct people away from like Trade and Lore and Climax and all that, but if there's a chance of getting them to like cross earlier before the construction, because I could just see a lot of people walking down the middle of the road. And mostly for like small vehicles, they can wait and let people cross, but like I don't want anybody feeling like they're going to get hit by a big truck or something. So I just was wondering if there's a chance to try and direct people mostly to go past the buildings at the beginning of the street, and then as soon as they're going to reach construction stuff, like after Heidi, maybe be able to cross to the right hand side, because we don't want to have people impacted by construction, and also actually Victor probably, because he's right there. But that's just my question. Yeah.
Dana, do you mind weighing in on that? Is that something the city might be able to help with?
I hear what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want pedestrians to be impacted by construction activities on Wall Street, and that you feel like it'd be helpful to let folks know they might want to be on that sidewalk side. What I wouldn't want is more ugly orange construction signage that says like, don't come here.
Yeah.
And so I
definitely don't want that.
You know what I mean? And so I don't, so let's keep that in mind. I mean, the city wouldn't be opposed to whatever works for both the construction team and for you all on Wall Street. But I also will just add that from our perspective, we don't have an issue with folks walking in the middle of the street.
Yeah,
So
for the most part, it's okay. It's
Yeah.
just, you know, I feel like a lot of people still don't know that it's shared. So when they do walk down, they get a little like startled, or, you know, or I just don't want it to be a thing where a bunch of people are just like always walking down the middle instead of anywhere else, because they get to the point where they can't walk on that left-hand side anymore. It just,
Right.
it tends to happen where like people will walk in the middle and won't realize that it is shared with cars, even though cars are on the street most of the time.
Well, and that I think like maybe there is an opportunity, you know, and obviously the city's been working on slowly working to support more of that shared street environment on Wall Street. And, you know, we have been looking at some signage options. But then, so for the Haywood streetscape construction, the city worked with the Downtown Association to do some signage. It's a little bit different, but like encouraging folks to come shop, you know, and helping pedestrians know that the space is open. Maybe there's some opportunity to think about some wayfinding in some form or encouragement in some form to come shop, and to let people know, instead of like, don't use this side of the street, to let them know like, you're welcome to use the sidewalk. I don't know. You get what I'm getting at, I think. But I'm curious, I guess, to hear if the construction team would be open to, you know, considering some additional wayfinding signage besides what is required. And maybe that's a conversation that folks in the area can continue to have.
Yeah, and I taking Dana, obviously the aesthetics of what making it look like a construction zone down there does. I'm all for wayfinding. That doesn't impact our ability to do what we need to do. It in theory encourages it. So I don't know if there's a way, David, in what we get from a sidewalk closure permit approval to kind of leave maybe it's even a period of time where we say, we're going to try this for the first 2 weeks. And a lot of times you just have to see how the public reacts to the new environment. And you understand very quickly that an additional sign or two may help alleviate a concern. And I'm okay with committing to this group to reevaluate it at that level.
Yeah, that would be fine with me. Yeah, only thing I can advise is from an MUTCD standpoint is that a type 2 barricade, type 1 barricade be used down at Otis Street saying sidewalk closed ahead across here, and then at the corner of the Flatiron building saying sidewalk closed. And really it's not, that area is not much of a sidewalk. It's not, I wouldn't call it ADA compliant with the bollards, the trees, and the rough brick. So, but yeah, whatever will work for you and the area businesses, that's fine with me.
And this is Megan. You know, Dana brought up a good point that we worked, you know, with the Haywood Streetscape project on some creative wayfinding signage. So maybe there's an opportunity to use some of those resources that were developed for that project on this project as well. And I can talk a little bit with you maybe about that offline, Chris, if there's some opportunity for us to work with you guys. You know, we had some more fun signage. We purchased some of those materials so they could potentially be used for this project as well, just to give people a more welcoming message, right? I think that's what we want, rather than don't do this, don't do that, if possible. I see a couple hands up if we're ready to move on. I've got Rebecca, and then I think the folks from the Beach Armor after that. So Rebecca, if you want to go ahead and ask your question.
It's Ever. I don't know why it's showing up as Rebecca. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
So I guess my question has to do with the fencing barricade that'll be along all of Wall Street and wrap the project. Is that something that we can do some kind of additional signage on the front of the Flatiron where it is across from the iron itself to direct people onto Wall Street? and also along the long Wall Street stretch, can we do something that is more of a beautification as opposed to just industrial?
I know I'll speak to, from a construction standpoint, what we want to do is make sure the fence is tall enough, which is in the 6 to 8 feet range, and that it has a windscreen on it, which you've seen on other fences downtown. After that, I don't have a strong preference of what is on the public side of that fence, but I know that there's ordinances that we've got to be mindful of within the city requirements. So that's probably going to be the driving factor there.
So we wouldn't allow any advertising, but the art museum is an example. They did, and now I can't even remember what was on it, but they had a nice construction, they had a banner on the construction fence of some form, or they had it printed on the screen. And we would be absolutely supportive of that type of project in this case.
Great.
Okay.
But what about directional signs? Like, can we put larger directional signs, or is it still that same, like whatever the 2x6 or 2x4 range?
We can't allow business names, individual business names,
Right.
and so that's the limitation on the city. And,
Hey Dana, this is Shannon.
yeah,
I would say if it's attached to the construction screening or fencing or anything, I think we can get away with saying like businesses open and maybe even listing those businesses when it's this temporary kind of construction related signage. I think we can do that. And I don't think anybody will blink an eye. It's the permanent signage, directional signage, that becomes more problematic. But I think as it relates to this project, to make sure that people know that those businesses are down there and that they're open, I think we could do something like that.
that's great. Shannon has the power to make that call. So thank you, Shannon.
Yeah.
Thank you, Shannon.
Yeah. Shannon is a planner with the city. And then David, who you saw earlier, I believe is a traffic engineer, just so y'all know who's speaking. So I think the bee charmer had a question.
Yeah, it's trying to go backwards to when we used to meet at Well Played. I remember the owner of the building, the current owner, had shown up to one or two of the meetings. I don't know if that gentleman will be joining us again in future meetings, but I do remember looking back on my notes from over a year ago that they talked about and I don't know that anybody here can answer this question, but they talked about they were going to need a certain number of parking spaces within the garage for their hotel guests. Is that still in the works? And if you know how many will be taken? I know that there was some sort of emergency and they needed to close the garage over Memorial Weekend. And it really hurt a lot of us down on that end. I heard from one individual that a piece of cement fell, and then I heard from somebody else it was just the gates. And that was the time that the people who were going to fix the issue within the garage could actually make it over that time. The revenue that obviously everybody lost during the pandemic, to no one's fault, but trying to recover from this thing, and then we're going to lose more parking in the future is a concern for me. Also, when the construction is complete in 23, I understand, pushing the sidewalk out to use the dumpsters and all that's wonderful, and redirecting the traffic, we really appreciate. And any signage that can direct people down on Battery Park is also appreciated as well. But currently, I know that Chapani has, an area where people can eat. I know you said you were going to redirect that and do something else with it. When the project is complete, will that area still be there? And then there is still parking further, like past that restaurant, all the way down to the very last store before you go down the steps to Wall Street. Will any of those parking spaces still be available? Because there are also some handicap spots there as well for people. Will those still be intact? Will you still be able to? Because we endured when the Cambria was under construction for 2 years and we lost a lot of parking. I also want to say, Chris, I appreciate the fact that you guys heard us loud and clear when we complained about the number of people from the Cambria who parked there early in the morning, and we lost a lot of parking spots then to find others. That's really appreciated very much. But parking obviously is a huge issue. And that garage is part of our lifeblood, that when people park and they either go to or from that parking lot, they walk in front of all those stores. And the less parking there is there, the less opportunity for people to stop in all of our stores on Battery Park and shop. So will the owner eventually be able to answer those questions, or does someone from the city know how many parking spots we're going to lose in the Otis Wall Street parking garage there? Hello?
Do you
Oh,
want
I don't
to take
mind to
that,
do,
Chris?
yeah, I don't mind to do some follow-up on that. I don't know, what I do know, and I can't quote the exact amount, is I believe in the zoning variance that you are required to get from city council in order to have the lodging designation. There was a requirement in that approval to have some quantity of off-site parking. What I also can share with you is, as the time has gone on through the pandemic, one of the things that our client has been able to do is acquire the parking lot where the old Swananoa Laundry building used to be, which is in between Lexington and Church Street, across from Central United Methodist, kind of right down the road from Foggy Mountain. And I have heard him talk about one of the main reasons that he wanted to try and acquire that property was so that he could achieve what his requirement was for off-site parking and kind of control that destiny rather than relying on some of the other options that may be in the area. So I don't know if that goes as far as to say they won't need any spaces in the deck that's there currently, but I do know that that's something that our client has worked on, and I don't mind to ask some questions to make sure. I don't want to quote something that's inaccurate here.
Oh,
But
I
I think I think what I've said up to this point is accurate though.
Thank you.
I think at one point we also, it has been over a year since we had that last meeting, but I think we also talked to Philip about potentially utilizing the Buncombe County deck on Cobb's
Okay.
Avenue, because that is more underutilized in terms of garage space than the Wall Street deck. And it's within, I think, a close enough range. So that might be an option for y'all to look into as well. That would
Yep.
alleviate.
And one of the things there, so we're still approaching the entitlement process from the technical review committee. And one of the things that I believe is part of the submittal that has not been fully developed for that TRC submittal is going to be how to handle the drop off and the parking spaces that are currently in front of the Flatiron. And I've heard they're evaluating several different valet options where the intent hopefully would be that the patrons of the hotel pull in similar to what you see happen at Aloft, where there's room for a handful of cars to pull in, check into the hotel, and then from that point on, a valet takes it and parks it. So to a degree, obviously within reason, distance doesn't matter as much because you're not asking a hotel guest to park their car, you're asking a valet to do it for them.
So during the construction phase, all of the parking along Battery Park there that faces that side of the street, the side that across from the hotel there, will those be closed during construction? Because out of the 7 days a week, we probably deliver goods 5.
Okay. The only spaces that Beverly Grant needs to close are just the spaces that'll be within our fenced in area, and then the spaces that are on the condominium side in order to maintain that 26 foot of clearance. But as far as parking spaces from that point further up the street, as long as it's not a parking space in front of Battery Park, or I'm sorry, in front of the Flatiron, we won't need to close it for construction purposes. Now, I don't know if they would be closed for other things, for outdoor seating opportunities or things of that nature, but I'm not involved in that.
No, I appreciate it. I understand that like delivery trucks and like all of us have to kind of share that street. And there's, we try to get in and out as quickly as we can. Even like we'll double park and the city lets us do it for about 3 minutes and we just get our crew and we just unload honey and all of our products as quickly as we can and then try to get out of the way. So we don't block anybody, but yeah, I just didn't know, like parking is part of our lifeblood down there on Battery Park.
Sure.
Okay, let's see. Oh, Dana, I think your hand is up.
Thanks. And I missed part of that for my thing is it cut out. So I'm sorry, but I do want to just flag that I hope that the construction team can, and I don't know if this is something David will look for in the permit, but that there is a plan for those businesses that need deliveries in this area, because it does look a bit tight. And secondly, just pointing out in the Wall Street garage, the city, at this point, as far as I know, pretty sure the city wouldn't be giving the project any dedicated spaces. At the same time, the nature of the garage is that it's open to the public. And so it's a valid concern that folks would come and take spaces, but the city will not be in a position to manage users of those spaces, if that makes sense. So just want to clarify that. And Megan, to Megan's point, yes, I recall at the last meeting, the discussion about using spaces at the county lot on Cox Avenue, which seems like a good idea.
Okay, do we have other questions? Chris, can you, just one from me, can you clarify the demolition phase through the end of the year? That's primarily internal work, correct? Inside?
It is, yep. So just from what you're going to hear and that sort of thing, the noise will be created by demolition debris being put into the dumpster, and then at the time within which the dumpsters are picked up. But as far as the actual work taking place during that phase, the only work that will happen exterior of the building will actually be up on the roof, where we've got to do some mock-ups for the historic folks to take a look at. But you're correct, everything will be on the interior of the building.
Any other questions from anyone? Okay, and we can make sure that, that everyone knows how to get in touch with the folks from Beverly Grant in case there are any questions that come up. And of course, the city staff that are, involved in this project. I'm happy to share that information out. I forgot to mention this earlier, but I did record the meeting. So I'll figure out a way to get that, uploaded so that any of the folks that weren't able to attend today can also take a look at this. And then anything from you guys, Dana or Steph?
I can't think of anything else. David, anything? Do you have anything? Okay.
Okay. All right. Well, we will go ahead and end the meeting then and let y'all get back to your day. Appreciate your time. Feel free to reach out if you have questions or concerns, or if we can point you in the right direction. Thanks, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks.